Good morning, friends. It's time for our fifth lesson with our resurrection eggs about our Easter story. So, yesterday was a hard time in our story. Yesterday was a sad day, and our eggs had things in them that were also sad. And so, as a quick reminder, yesterday was the day that Jesus was being treated very meanly, and people were making fun of him and they were saying mean things to him. And remember, friends, these were the same people that were cheering for him when he first came to Jerusalem. So things got very, very confusing for Benjamin, and they got very, very confusing for the people that loved Jesus, his family and friends as well. So quick review. Yesterday we had the two yellow eggs, the light yellow and the dark yellow. And the light yellow had the circle. Do you remember what this was? It was to look like the crown that was put on Jesus's head, but it was kind of a crown to make fun of him because he calls himself the King of the Jews. So instead of it looking like a real king's crown, they made fun of him and made it a crown that had pointy things on it. So when it went on his head, it kind of gave him some boo-boos, and that was not okay. So that was what the one egg was, and that was sad. And then here was the nails, the three nails that looked like a cross. And that was also a sad part too, because the cross was also representing how much Jesus was hurting. And that made people really sad, and it was very confusing, and they were treating him like a bad person when he was actually really a good person. So that's what those two eggs meant yesterday. So today is a little different, friends, because we have one story page in our book, but it actually has two eggs to it. So it won't be a very long story today. But it will have a couple things in our eggs that we'll talk about. So it's still a little sad. It's still a little sad, all right? But we're getting there. In a couple days, give you a hint, in a couple days, the story gets really good and happy, all right? So here's our story now. So Benjamin watched as the soldiers still teased him. He tried to close his ears to their mean words. Finally, he looked up at Jesus and looked into his eyes, and he saw a lot of pain and sadness, and it hurt his heart. But he also saw incredible love. And like before, Jesus looked right at Benjamin. Surely this is his way of saying that all would be okay. Perhaps even Jesus would do a miracle. Keep that in mind. But instead, on this day, the sky turned dark, and Jesus cried, "Father," and he meant God, "into your hands I commit my spirit," which means he was ready to go to heaven to be with God. The ground shook like an earthquake, and Jesus took his last breath. Benjamin was stunned. Jesus wasn't here anymore. As if in a dream, Benjamin heard the people move. He saw a soldier holding his spear. People hurried to take care of the different people around them, and soon they were gone, and he was alone. He picked up a stone the soldiers used to play games with and looked up at the dark sky. Why had God allowed this to happen? He was sad. Later that night, he opened his treasure box, and he placed the two things he found in his box and looked at his collection. It all had seemed so important when he thought Jesus was the real king. But now these things only reminded him of sadness. So it was another sad day in our story. But we have two eggs to look at. So let's see what they are. All right, so we have this pretty color egg. And inside is a dice. You may have seen something like this before in board games you might have at home. The dots are numbers, so there's like the 1, and there's 3, 3 is a big number for us. We've talked about that before. So this actually, the reason we're having this in an egg is because when people were making fun of Jesus, they were playing games right by him, and they were kind of taking things like maybe something he was wearing, and they were pretending to play a game where whoever got the highest number got the piece of clothing. So it wasn't a nice game, but this is what that's what this is for, is to remind us that they played mean games about Jesus. And then the other egg is the spear, and the spear is what the soldiers would have had back in Jesus's time. So there would be a pointy top and a wooden handle, and this represents the soldiers and how they were treating Jesus as well. So there's, a lot of pieces to this story that are kind of hard, but like I said, the story when Jesus was no longer there that day, this is when the story it's the end of the sad, really sad part. It starts to get better, okay? So tomorrow, we're going to have 2 eggs. I'm just making sure. Yep, we have 2 eggs. And I promise you it's going to get happier, all right? So I love you. Keep remembering all the eggs that we've learned so far, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.